Dallas Cowboys fans, breaking trade news, and you're not going to love it. Jalen Ramsey, who has been on the Dallas Cowboys radar, or at least the radar of Cowboys Nation, a guy who has talked openly about his thoughts on the Cowboys. He had hoped to have been drafted here, felt he was fibbed to, grew up a Cowboy fan, all that stuff. Still a Pro Bowl caliber player. He has been shipped out by the Los Angeles Rams. Just happened, breaking news. The winning bidder, although I don't know how many other bidders there were, and I'll get to that as it relates to the Cowboys in a moment. He goes to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins continue to swing big. We talk a lot about the emptying the bucket of the Philadelphia Eagles and others, but the Dolphins have done much the same thing and continue to try to do things that include even the much gossiped move of Tom Brady to Miami. Not that one yet, not the other ones yet, but Tyreek Hill a year ago, that led the charge of Dolphins' moves to contention on the roster. Now they get the great cornerback, Jalen Ramsey. Why not the Cowboys? This is going to bother you when we break this down. And I am going to address that nasty word that many of you bring up that I've kind of poo-pooed. We're going to take an examination of it from another angle here. The baseline question on Jalen Ramsey getting traded from the Rams to the Dolphins as it regards the Dallas Cowboys. Were the Cowboys cheap or asleep? I'm Mike Fisher, by the way, your trusty and trusted reporter. This is the fishbowl that is the star. And we have some questions to pose over there here in the coming hours and days. And of course, the 13th, Monday, marks the opening of the legal tampering portion of free agency. That means the Cowboys could start talking to guys on other teams. I'm going to tell you this now, and I'm going to urge you to tuck this into your knapsack. As I sit here right at this moment, the Cowboys have not made any offers to their own free agent guys, except Tony Pollard. Obviously, that doesn't count the renegotiations with guys because those aren't offers. The redo on Dak and Zach, that's not an offer. Tony Pollard counts as an offer. It's a contract. I'm even told that contrary to what's been reported, the Cowboys have not made an offer to Dalton Schultz. Now, I'm looking for a second source to confirm that, but it fits the Cowboys' relative inactivity. The Cowboys wait to the second tier habit. For all the talk about we're working on something big, or they're working on something big move. For all the talk from Steven saying we're going to add a playmaker with juice, and all those things can still happen. But as we sit here now, we're hearing about Odell Beckham Jr. wanting $20 million a year. Well, that's a rough one financially. Is Jalen Ramsey also a rough one? Here's what we understand the trade compensation is. First of all, a third-round pick, which is pretty paltry for a talent like Jalen Ramsey, and then they throw in the tight end Hunter Long, inconsequential. No offense to Mr. and Mrs. Long. Why so cheap? Well, the initial thought would be, well, that's because of the salary that Miami's taking on. Wait a minute. Here's the salary as it stands now that the Dolphins are taking on. And I warn you again, you're not going to like this. Here's Ramsey's dollars. For 2023, it's a $17 million base salary. That is not ridiculous. For 2024, it's a $14.5 million base salary plus a $4 million bonus. So that's $18.5 million. In 2024, not ridiculous. 2025, $15.5 plus 4. Looking forward, not ridiculous. I assume because of that roster bonus issue, there's some escapability along the way. There is nothing outrageous about any of that, meaning there are those who are going to, in Cowboy Nation like you, who are going to feel their own outrage at why the Cowboys wouldn't get involved in giving up a third-round pick and 3 years at about $18 million a year for an all-pro cornerback. I hope that the best answer the Cowboys have is, we looked at it, we got outbid, we got another plan. I hope for your sake that that's the answer the Cowboys give and that it's a legitimate answer. I wonder if the Cowboys and the Dolphins and everybody else have done their research on this, and even though I just read you the cheap numbers, relatively cheap numbers on his salary, that they already know that once Ramsey gets to town, he's going to say, hey, I'm so glad to be here. I want a new contract. That's kind of how this works. Completely conceivable. In fact, it might already have been part of the talks that the Dolphins have already nodded their heads to. Yeah, get here and we'll get something new for you. We'll work it out. Or it's already worked out, conceivably. If Jalen Ramsey wants a gigantic new contract that pays him the way cornerbacks are going to get paid in 3 years, or wants a gigantic new contract in which he says, I am a wide receiver on defense. Pay me like a wide receiver. These guys make $27 million. Why shouldn't I? I can certainly see why any team, salary cap wise, would balk at that, including the Cowboys. But when you use the word cheap, and I used it here for one of the very first times on this thing, were the Cowboys cheap or asleep? I hope it was neither. Here's where the cheap comes in theory. And of course, I've tissed you when you talk about, Steven's cheap. Steven's a cheapskate. And I say, well, no, the cap's here and they spend to the cap. What they don't do, however, is lately, except certainly for some of their own players, is write gigantic signing bonus checks. That they don't do. Their cash outlay is not as high as other teams. In fact, it might be at the very bottom of the NFL in terms of the Cowboys writing big checks. Now, there's not a lack of funds in the Jones bank account. Could there be some decision, hey, let's tighten things up a little bit? Instead of be spendy, which I don't know that they are particularly seen as that, let's tighten it up even more. Let's not just do this cap-wise, let's do this cash-wise. This better not be true. I better be wrong in taking this wild, crazy guess that somebody inside the building hasn't just said, no, Ramsey doesn't fit into our cap plans, which is fine. I hope somebody didn't say, no, Ramsey wants to come to town. He wants somebody to hand him a $50 million check just to get off the plane, and we're not in the mood to do that. If you're not in the mood to do that, you're in the wrong business. And I hate to think that the $8 billion Dallas Cowboys are deciding to not be in the business of writing big checks, because you won't compete with the teams that are writing the big checks. So, between are the Cowboys cheap or the Cowboys asleep? It's not two very good choices that I've left you there. We've got much more on Dak Prescott's contract and what's coming around the bend, and Odell Beckham Jr. and what he wants. And I'm going to hammer this home again. I don't think the Cowboys have given Dalton Schultz a pretty solid contract offer. I don't think they've given anybody a contract offer, even Dalton Schultz. And the fact that story would come out, that report would come out, and it just kind of lingers there, that kind of makes the Cowboys front office look like it's trying. When I don't think the Cowboys front office gave Dalton Schultz an offer at all. And I don't think the Dallas Cowboys front office likes the idea of writing a $50 million check at some point down the line to Jalen Ramsey. Cheap or asleep. Fish out.